I typically haven't lately, I shouldn't say typically, but I haven't lately introduced everybody right away, but I am today because we have a special guest in the room today, and it's not you. So we've got my sister over here. We always say it's the family affair, but this time it really is. So we got Trish over here. She's the podcast producer. And then we have the podcast engineer, Trey, which is my nephew and godson. And then we have my son, Aiden Madrid, in the house today from Los Angeles because his birthday is on Saturday. He's turning 22 years old, and he is currently looking for a job because his internship is over with Create Music. So he went to CRAS, which is a Conservatory of Recording Arts Studio, right? That's what it's called?
Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences.
Yeah. I've said it wrong quite a bit.
It's long. It's a long name.
So he graduated from there just a few weeks ago, really. Yep. So now he's looking for a real job. Yep. So anybody out there that wants to hire somebody as a sound engineer,
it can already tell he's got great taste in music, right? On the Rod Stewart
t-shirt, yeah.
It's awesome.
He's got a wide range of music likings, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, of course.
So let's move on to the guest, though. The special guest today is Phil Crawford. And Phil is another guest from our illustrious group, Junto.
You pronounce it correctly.
It's not really, correctly. Actually. It's actually Junto.
Junto.
It's Junto.
Junto or Junto, but yeah, we looked it up actually when
Junto, 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 and Junto.
For this
we can't do this again. We just did this last week with Steven.
We're going Junto.
We're going Junto. It's just easiest for the whites. So you've been in the group now for a couple years. And I think one of the things today, there's so much to unpack with Phil. That's why I think this is going to be a special episode. Because he's one of the younger guys in the group, but he's quickly rose to one of the leaders of the group. And I think that even though his career is in the enterprise space, there's a lot of other things that you've brought to the table so far that I want to get to. I want to talk about today. And a lot of it's regarding just like, your mindset and, the kind of just growing and figuring out like some of the things from your past, right? So a lot of things that have happened over your life, and then I think it's led you to this new space, and it's made a big influence on all the guys in the group. And it's funny, we talked about this earlier. We're kind of looking at looking at you like that guy now instead of the guy that works at whatever company his name is, we can say if we want to.
I appreciate it because starting out with the group, when Steven brought up the invite, I was extremely interested just because of knowing what Junto was, had attempted to start it up coming out of college, but when Steven brought it up, the makeup of the group, I was a little hesitant. Even after meeting a couple of the guys, most of the group are business owners, full-fledged entrepreneurs, and most have kids, right? And so those two things, after getting to know everyone, I was like, I don't know, is this going to be a fit? But after getting to know you guys over the course of the last couple of years, it's one of the best decisions I've made. Awesome.
And originally it was made you were supposed to be a business owner or C-suite, right? So most of the guys are, but it just depends upon the person, how they're going to fit. And obviously you were a good decision in that aspect. So let's talk a little bit about how you got there to your current job at Kiva.
Oh, Workiva.
Yeah.
Workiva. Yeah. So, that was 11 years ago, and kind of working backwards, I entered the workforce, bringing it full circle with Steven to start, as an intern at a payroll tax company in Scottsdale that Steven's dad founded. Was in a marketing function and was interning in a marketing function, and then this was 2009, was on the law school path, and realized that I did not want to go down the law school path, and had a conversation with Steven's dad over lunch. I'd been there a couple of years. At that time, was looking to make a move into the sales organization. Actually, that was pre-ADP acquisition. Essentially decided if I had the opportunity to jump into a marketing role in the current state of that economy instead of going to law school, it was a pretty attractive opportunity and a logical next step. And so we did. And then shortly thereafter, ADP did acquire MasterTax, making us ADP employees, and it was beneficial to both of us from an experience-wise. that is when really got the calling, realizing that Stephen was in sales, our friendship, and getting to know the workings of the business. It was at a lot of trade shows. Realized I wanted to make a switch into the sales role and the sales world. And while I was getting my resume out and about and things were changing at ADP, Workiva reached out, said there was a small startup out of Iowa, and I almost didn't take it because they were so new. And so went down to SkySong, walked into that phase 1 building, and there's a ping pong table and a guy in Jordans and a V-neck T-shirt. And this is supposed to be an enterprise software company. And there's one guy sitting on, literally, he had a box as a desk and a chair rolled up next to him. And he's like, hey, and he's like, that's the sales team. Anyway, this guy proceeded to walk me through what the vision was for Workiva, where it was going. They had changed the game in regard to financial reporting, and that the curve of people that were going to be using this software, literally the white space of how the industry was going to change. And he said, if you don't take this offer, or if you move on to the next phase, which was one other interview at the time, if it doesn't go anywhere, he goes, I'll find you another job.
Yeah.
And was supposed to start with another company that next week, and I canceled on him and took the job. And now it's been 11 years later.
Wow.
Been with Workiva, selling in multiple facets.
And you've had a ton of success early, and you've made a lot of money. And I think this is going to lead us back into back into your life. And it's like, you found out quickly that that wasn't the solution to everything, right? There was it was fun to have money, obviously, and have success, but there was something missing. So let's go back to where you're from. You're from Missouri, correct? Yep. And kind of like the origin story.
Absolutely.
Because I think this is the impactful stuff.
Yeah. So and I've never shared this, especially never shared it with people that I've met 12 minutes ago, but
or the world at this point.
It's a pretty unique origin story. So I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and grew up in a small town outside of St. Louis. But my actual birth mother, when we talk about entrepreneurship, it was a unique situation because my mother was actually conceiving children with the intention of selling them outside of the government, essentially an illegal
like black market.
The 80s were a wild time, apparently. And so she was orchestrating illegal adoptions and trying to pick out specific types of men. And after that would happen, she would then find families that were looking that may be outside of the approval rating or whatever to pass along children. And so I have 9 half-siblings that I've never met. And I was the one that was on the radar, and they intercepted and so my mom went to jail shortly after I was born, and was put into the system for about a year, had one foster home, but then was adopted by my parents. And for the rest of this conversation, we'll just say my parents because they are.
Yeah.
And so two amazing parents. They were actually below the income threshold as well for adoption, but my parents had done so much foster parenting that they made an exception. Knew they had support from my grandparents, and just grew up in a real, probably what you would think in the Midwest, a lot of church, a lot of athletics. My mother and father were adamant about us being Renaissance children or being a Renaissance man. So you would do sports. You were also in the plays. You were expected to make B's and above, church on Sundays, and around the family a lot. So I lucked out. Like I hit the lottery from what life could have been, apparently. So that is typically usually a unique start to the story.
So I have to ask a question. How did she get caught?
Good question. So I tried to seek down this file. This was only probably 5 years ago, and started really going down, doing some deep work. And you had to file to actually get the details, this was all kind of disclosed to my parents before the process, but the file was closed out upon adoption. So I would have had a tough time even tracking her down, but it's a great, I'm very curious about that too, and never even had the desire to search this stuff down until about 4 or 5 years ago, but it's a good question.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I have a lot of other questions about it too.
Yeah.
That's one.
Well, you were saying the other day that you talked to your aunt recently about some stuff too, and had your adopted parents or your other, your immediate family, that they looked at any of this stuff before?
So I don't know. I don't know if those potential siblings have, but great point on my aunt. This was transferred to her from my mother, and she's the real reason I wound up in Arizona. She's my godmother. She of my extended family had the most worldly success, I would say, and we were just very close from a young age.
Yeah, and
she's the reason she actually put me through Arizona State's golf camp, which is where I found out I knew I was going to be moving here shortly. When you're 15,
was that in high school?
It was.
Okay.
So when you're a junior, sophomore in high school, and you walk down Palm Walk and stay in dorms at a co-ed golf camp, it was pretty evident where I was going. But,
yeah.
But my aunt is the one that's really been there for me, because we'll probably get to it in a little bit later, but no longer have my parents, and having her as I'm a North Star throughout all this, and putting some of these pieces together has been really instrumental to my success.
So let's talk about your parents. Sure. So you lost one of them when you were 12, right?
Correct. My father passed away when I was 12. It was the middle of the night, and he woke up, had a huge chest pain, could barely get to the car. They took him in for to surgery immediately, as his aorta had not fully split, but had a tear. So he took a rubber band and kind of cut the rubber band, but didn't fully cut it through. That's where he was at. Got him into surgery. He got through surgery just fine, but he was put on a respirator in recovery, and he didn't make it through that. So he wound up not being able to breathe throughout recovery. And that was what I was told.
So how was the rest of your elementary school through high school then? Were you just with your mom? And your aunt obviously was around.
From that point on, yes. So my mom, right after that, talking back to entrepreneurship in the blood, she such a strong individual. Obviously, any single parent doing that is, but she opened a hair salon, as that was her skill and trade, and had never opened or ran one before. But yeah, just my mother. Some support from my grandparents, was very close with them. But my sister and I were just raised as us two. We lived next to the salon, and Mom ran that business. Right next door.
So how was that for your mom when you decided to leave to Arizona?
That's when I came back from that golf camp, I'll never forget it. She just saw the excitement, telling her about all the experience, and she looked. She said, "You're leaving, aren't you?" I can't lie to you, Mom. That's really what I want to do. But she was extremely supportive. She always said, "You've got a special set of skills," and she was the parent that told you can do anything, which I think every parent should tell their children. She was never going. She wanted me to fly, whatever it was. So she was in full support when I left. That was right before she wound up getting diagnosed with cancer.
Okay, so how long before she passed away? Were you in here, Arizona yet?
I was, and that was
okay.
It was 4 years later. She got through all of her treatment and was able to fight it off until I actually graduated from ASU.
Oh wow!
So yeah.
So you've been through some stuff. Let's go back a little bit though. The adoption, when you're now, say 5-6 years old, did you know what had happened? I mean, did you know that? Did you remember being in foster care when you were 1?
So that's a great question, and I do have memories. They're very brief on when I first came and was introduced to the family. I remember being at that table and being a little bit overwhelmed with that. But you bring up a good question, because my mom let me know about the adoption, not the details that I shared in the beginning about my mother's process, my biological mother's process, but she let me know that I was adopted as soon as I could comprehend it. And that actually posed some interesting, going through this work, it posed some interesting challenges because when I shared it at school, kids are just cruel, right?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a big deal, but it was just kind of like, oh, you're different. You're actually, your parents didn't even want you type of deal. So,
kids are dicks.
But somebody else chose you.
Aren't they? That is a very, very good point. And my attitude of gratitude has never been in question because of that. Like where my life could have been just from your starting point on this earth, where you're geographically dropped in, dictates a lot of how hard the fight's going to be here.
Yeah.
So.
Was your sister adopted as well?
She was. She was also adopted, different mother, and she, which has had her own set of challenges as well, but she was adopted just a little bit younger than me. She's 4 years younger. And she has given how our parents, the timing and how early they left the planet, we definitely had two different roads on how life's.
How much younger is she?
4 years.
Okay. Oh yeah, that makes a huge difference. Yeah. So this all kind of leads into, I think, one of the, like all the work you've been doing on yourself and stuff, and we've been talking about this for a while now, but when you've gone, at what year, was it 4 or 5 years ago that you really were like, okay, I need to like dive in and to do some work on myself and figure out why I'm behaving the way I'm behaving, and deeper dive into like why maybe all this stuff happened, from your childhood, and even though you knew that you were adopted, you're still, I'm sure, dealing with like PTSD of some things as you get older. You start thinking about things. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're spot on.
Okay.
And it was about 6 years ago. And
because you've always been a very successful person, right? Like always, right? So even though you might have been teased, you were still probably like the guy that's still good at every sport, and probably the guy that was the actor, the lead. So, so 4 or 5 years ago, were you married at this point?
I say it would be 6 years ago.
Okay, 6 years ago.
And there's something that happens right when a guy or a human turns 30.
Yeah,
like you start pushing 30 and things there's somewhere around that area you just start thinking, what, who am I? Like some of the, you've had fun, you've had a lot of fun, and you start contemplating things. But I was in a pretty low spot then, and I did have, as soon as I joined Workiva, we were in such high growth. I wound up in a position to where we were selling a ton, and I was earning a lot more money than anticipated at that age. And at this point, my parents were gone. My little sister at this point is struggling very heavily with addiction. And I was I'd be in a long-term relationship and then out of it because in my head it was like, what's the point? Like really thinking about end game, what would be the ideal situation. And it hit me like you're drinking entirely too much. You're this working nonstop, burning it at both ends. This work hard, play hard life is not
right.
This isn't sustainable. And I was on a flight back from a work trip, whiskey in hand, and was reading Men's Health, ironically. And an article came up with Howard Stern and transcendental meditation, and I'm like, what's Howard Stern doing meditating? And went down the deep path that I kind of walked through in the Gento presentation, but I just gave it a try. And I was just at this point that if you have, money in the bank set up, you have all the things that people say that they want, and you're still this empty, there's got to be something more, and there's got to be a better way to go about this. And I'd never done therapy. I was pretty against therapy. That Midwest mindset is just figure it out. Right. And my family is a bunch of alpha males in the Midwest. You just you either have some drinks and
smoke a cigarette and
just
figure it out.
Exactly. Figure it out and on to the next. You just work harder. And there's something to that too, by the way. But when I found that, I wound up going home and going down a YouTube rabbit hole. Found out that transcendental meditation costs like $2,000 to go through the whole deal. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. It sounds like they're just sitting in silence and repeating a word. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, let's just give this a try before we start investing money into it. And I think I am an exception with how quickly it dropped in, because a lot of people say with meditation it takes some time. It wasn't easy. But just getting silent like that, I was able to really get to some thoughts. I didn't get to all of this in one session, but I was like, I'm going to keep this up. And so I just went hard into self-help. And I was never against it. I was always reading, I was always improving and trying to get better, but I went off the deep end. Everything I could get my hands on, realizing that thoughts are things that our subconscious mind is literally reprogrammable, which is really what is the crux of what I've come to and what I'm trying to pass along. And that the more we can get into silence and get into that theta mindset, we can actually reshape historically how we feel about things and let go of a lot to allow us to then add the attributes and skills and life that we want. You can actually bring it into existence. So
the subconscious mind, when you did that session for us at the retreat, it's funny because have you guys ever done, have you ever meditated? Okay, you have. I know you have. Well, I think we all have, but we had this, it's like a movie room in this big house in Heber, and he did a session, and it was only like 15 minutes, right? The actual meditation?
About 20? Yeah, okay. Just south of 20, yeah.
And it's funny because it was all him, and a lot of the guys came out of that going, wow, that was impactful. That was like one of the best meditative states they've gone into. And it may be because people were also tired from the night before.
And those beanbags
were great. I fell asleep almost. But it was very impactful, I think. And I think coming out of that retreat, out of all the things we did, and that was the thing that most people were talking about. And it's kind of like what we were talking with Stephen Harris last time. This is something that he should be doing along with the subconscious mind session, but along with the meditation is a whole presentation that, beyond your regular job, this is something that you should be doing for everybody, right? It's like, I don't know if it's a career that you want to go do or a side hustle or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a passion for you, right?
It absolutely is. This stuff works.
Yeah.
And so you can only experience the benefits of it so much without wanting to be share it as much as possible.
Right. So let's go a little bit further into the subconscious mind and like how you kind of do a little bit of what you did for us. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So really the idea is at any given point, what we're trying to go about during our daily lives, we have this, our conscious brain of what we are trying to look and achieve. You have your to-do list. You have everything that in your conscious mind that you're trying to really execute on. The problem is your subconscious mind has been programmed with all of the habits, behaviors, beliefs that you have about yourself running on autopilot. And those are the things that pop into your head and tell you, okay, I'll deal with that spreadsheet later. I'll book that meeting at another time. And this is why you procrastinate. Your subconscious mind is literally telling you, no, that's difficult. Do something easier out of survival. So it's really just trying to keep you alive and keep you. That's why we love being at that baseline. And that's why and myself included, this is not something that I've completely solved, but if you can interrupt that pattern and find that moment in between where you react to that trigger that's in your head and your subconscious mind, and you can halt it, create space, and then choose how you want to react to it, that's when the magic happens. It's that space in between reaction and response. And so when you're sitting in silence and focusing on one point of action, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but say it's your breath. Each time that your head wants to go away from focusing on that breath and get distracted, you're not going to clear your head completely. You acknowledge the fact that there's a thought that popped in your head, dismiss it, and bring it back to the present moment. And that's meditation in a nutshell, and anything can be meditation. If you're going for a walk, just where each foot is going in front of each other. If you're doing deep work, and that's where the flow state stuff comes in, that's after I found meditation, my biggest goal was, okay, how can I replicate this sense of focus, peace, doing without effort? It really is. And that comes from that ability to single task and stay on focus at one thing at a time. And that's where the benefit from meditation gets us into the practical achieving and doing of knowledge work.
Did you get most of this information from I'm just asking for the viewers, right? So from YouTube, from like books, like how did you figure that you take courses? Like how did you get into all this?
Yeah, great question. There were a lot of books, but I invested heavily in this too.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, I'll put their pricing out there, but it was actually almost as much as my master's degree. It was around $30,000 to go through the Flow Research Collectives program.
Oh, wow.
So that was really more of the practical, how do I take these tactics and recreate flow states or get myself in a flow state? But then there were 3 modules on how do I coach it. And I'm like, well, you want to get better at something, learn how to teach it. And so I've never found any group that has actually put performance coaching together like they did. So I invested and went all in. And that also got me a PhD performance coach for the time in that program and studied there. And then I've hired outside of that 4 performance coaches since that in 2020.
Okay.
Or
it makes me feel
2016.
a little bit better because I was thinking, God, this kid's gotten so good at this so fast.
Phil, are you like a Dr. Joe Dispenza
Oh my
fan?
God, yes.
Breaking the habit of
being yourself.
being yourself. When I read that, I was like mind blown. Like,
That's where Jason Randolph and Tracy Randolph are obsessed with. That's
really?
where that's the retreat that they just went on.
Oh wow! I read the book. Actually,
That's top of my list.
Yeah,
You know what?
he said it was the best thing he's ever done.
Brian North. I think the first time he was on the podcast, the one that didn't get aired, I think he brought that up. So I bought it, and I've got it on Audible, and I listened to it more than I reading it took me a while. I'll have to say it's hard content.
It's pretty dense.
So I've listened to it a few times, but what you're saying definitely seems.
Have you done any of his guided stuff on YouTube or Spotify?
No.
I'll send you after this.
Okay.
Because
There's a lot
that's the
of that.
exact you nailed exactly what I'm getting at, and it's the sense of he has documented portions of that book where people are curing physical disease.
Yeah.
And it's because of this emotional where we're holding it. Dis-ease is what disease is comprised of, and it's because of that stress building up and not being released from your body. And we like to hold it. And as soon as you get rid of it, you can not only can you physically feel it, but all of the other things that you're looking to do and tangibly achieve start to happen effortlessly. So it's just the problem is it's another thing to do. It requires work. It's like the gym for your mind, but once you get there and see the results, it really builds on each session. So
did that lead to like what was like the next thing that you were doing? Because like there's the meditation, there's the breath work, there's the subconscious mind, how to implement that all, then the books and the podcasts and the YouTube, the course, the PhD. I mean, you're constantly learning. You're obviously way into this. So when did like the toxic, like let's get rid of like the toxins in my body sort of stuff come about?
Yeah, so I think I know what you're getting at, and it's very. You and I bonded over this because when I found out you were doing it, I was like, excellent. There's people in Junto that are open to this, but so there are a lot of.
Can we say what this is?
Yeah.
Okay, so combo.
Yeah.
We both have done this, and you go ahead and go for it.
Sure. So to get into any kind of, there are physical fundamental things that you have to get rid of before your mind starts working right? And the best way to start is with your diet. Like I'm not a nutritionist or a doctor, but cutting out sugars and processed foods is a great start. Drinking a bunch of water, getting that up point. But there are modalities out there that can really trigger a total and rapid detoxification for the body. And one of them is being combo. And so it's a frog secretion from a specific Amazonian frog, and it is placed in gates in your arm, or you can do spine, other areas of the body. And once those gates are just like a light, almost cigarette burn on the skin, you apply the combo, the secretion, and then you wait. You drink quite a bit of water, more water than you would care to. You sit with it, and then you purge it up. But the thing is, as you know, you're fasted going into this thing. There's nothing in your stomach. Mm-hmm. So
you'll know if the person next to you didn't fast.
Very true. And even if you did, like what color is the fluid that came out?
Yellow, green,
dark.
Well, mine was this is probably getting too weird, but it was definitely yellow and it was almost like bile. But I know of other people that was black, right? But I didn't drink coffee or didn't have any caffeine, sugar, alcohol, drugs, meat for a month coming into this whole thing.
I didn't know you went full.
Yeah,
full
because I was told I had to.
That's good.
They told me I had to, and if I wasn't, I was gonna like die. So of course, I came in like way more clean than everybody else. But I was also functioning at like the highest level I've ever functioned in my life.
That's
like
clean
my
body, clean mind.
So when I did it, it was intense. But one of the things that's crazy is, I don't know if this happened to you, but like you swell up.
Oh.
Like you look crazy. And especially if you're doing it with people, because your body is like literally clearing out everything through your pores and through your stomach and everything. So everything that's bad in your system is gone.
It's incredible.
So like your skin, like do you have like
Oh,
do you
it's
break
just all of
out?
a sudden you go like this.
But like do you have like acne?
No.
Does that kind of stuff happen?
No, it's mostly out through. It
Yeah.
comes out through your purge in your mouth.
Got it.
But it really is instant. Have you ever felt worse and better in
No.
a shorter period of time?
Never, ever.
Me either.
It's an amazing, and this is not like a hallucinogenic thing
No.
at all. It's just literally like a medicine, basically, that clears you out. And there are people do it all over. You can go places in town here and do this.
They do it with infants in the Amazon.
Yeah.
Like this is their kind of, not to get too, this is their vaccines. How they use in the Amazon. Like that's how it's like an annual thing. Let's clear up, let's clean up, and use nature to do it.
And typically this leads to, a lot of people do this on its own. I know you were doing it alone, but other people do some other medicines, so to speak, or some other things to kind of, so this may be like the first thing you do in the day before you do some other like growing and learning, some work for yourself, so to speak.
Yeah, it definitely is used. Again, we're trying to clear out any type of inflammation that's clouding our mind, right, and our body. Oftentimes it will be used in association with another plant ceremony, which is when we're talking about the subconscious mind, you can get to a certain point with meditation and the breath work. Like breath work gets you, can release natural levels of DMT and get you to a space where you can get closer to the issues that you're sitting with. But there are plant medicines that have been used for thousands and thousands of years where you almost have no choice but to get to your subconscious mind and look at the things that you don't want to look at. And that's another option for folks to explore, but we're not. You talk to your doctor, talk to your...
So Phil, is combo the same thing as toad?
No.
Like, it's different.
Oh, different.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Toad is that's the DMT, that's where you go if you don't want to do breath work and meditation.
I always wonder if those two frogs are friends in the animal kingdom.
They might be.
It should be a cartoon.
There might be. So when you were going into the breath work and the meditation, the combo and all that sort of stuff, did you find, like, when did you find like peace? And I know you're still looking for this stuff and you're still doing a ton of work, but like you had mentioned to me before, you had to go, okay, well, wait a second, why was my mom like this? And then why my birth mom, and then why is it that like I lost my parents at such a young age? Why did I want to go, and why was I drinking so much, and why was I like chasing women when you're younger? Like why were all these things? Like you're definitely a thinker of like, why am I doing all these things all the time? That's why you probably study so much. So when did you hit a point where you're like, okay, this stuff's working?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, right? Like I didn't have any aha moment. I mean, there've been a bunch of aha moments, but not like overnight. This is what happened, and this is what your issues were. But piecing together, like it became very crystal clear to me that when I left my mother, like we've talked about gratitude here, this idea of gratitude and being grateful for the family that I had found also made me really hate myself that I still had pain of being abandoned. And again, you shouldn't focus on that. You're safe here. And the more I put together, even from my own family, there were concerns all the way throughout my my childhood and even into my adult life that I have to perform and do well, or is this family going to get rid of me too? Right. Is this woman going to get rid of me too? Am I enough?
Yeah.
And I never thought that. I never, that was never in my conscious mind, right? And this is, again, stuff that most guys don't like to talk about, and I didn't. But now I'm like, this is great because I know I am enough. But it was piecing together that just because you were taken out of this situation, which is a blessing, you don't have to be, it's okay that you have issues with being abandoned. Like, that's okay. But you also, once you accept that and let it go, which I have gotten to a place where I really felt like I was communicating, whether it was real or just in my mind, it doesn't matter, with my biological mother, with my mother that has passed, in stating, you all are doing the best that you can, and I love you deeply, and everything worked out the way that it worked out, and it's all good. And I don't have that fear of being abandoned anymore. I am enough as an individual. I'm doing the right things, making peace with the past, being a better man each day, and that's all okay. Yeah. And I challenge anybody that's listening, if you're having any inkling of this, if you have any type of unresolved anger or sadness about something, like, there are modalities, and just sitting in silence by yourself is something you don't even need anybody else or any other substance or anything like that to kind of get to the base of it. So
when you met your wife, did she, obviously she knew about your past, but did she know how, your thoughts of abandonment and all this sort of stuff, and like, was she been on this journey with you through all this stuff?
Absolutely not. Okay. She did not know. Okay. She's stoic Irish, and I was going to be the guy that,
like, Irish from Ireland.
She is from from Dublin, Ireland, and when we met, she thought I had everything figured out. And, well, I mean, she knew she did. We were pretty good, but like, from an emotional standpoint, she just thought I was a super well adjusted. Which at that point I had been doing the work. I would never have met her. Yeah. Like, because I met her, it did happen fast. It was about 2 years after I really went down the self-help and meditation path hard. But I was a partier, you know, like a lot of us are in Gento or were.
Some are still.
And she knows about that past too. Yeah. And she knew that I was a hard worker and that I was continually trying to get better. But she didn't realize any of these, what I just shared about getting to the abandonment stuff. And most people who are listening to this, if it was shared, they wouldn't think so. I would just hit it really well. We all do. Yeah. We
for sure.
We all do. We don't want to bother other people with our weakness, but that's not the way to approach it.
No. I mean, not to get myself involved in this, but I'm very terrible at that. Like, I definitely don't tell everybody what's going on.
Well, I've tried to corner you to get to talk about your parents multiple times. You are an elusive one. You're pretty good at it.
I've known him his entire life, and I would agree with that.
Yeah,
like, there's a lot there.
There's a lot to unpack here. That's for me. So, well, I just think that, like, for me, it's I have a lot of responsibilities for a lot of different people. That some people think that it would be better if I was more. It's not that I don't, like,
emotionally available.
Yeah, but it's also, I don't really want everybody to think that I'm not strong, because I have to take care of everybody in my mind.
So what's your definition of strength?
Just making sure that everybody else feels okay.
Stoicism, I think, is kind of what I would say about him. It's just like strong, a little closed off, because, and I'm sorry, Ryan, I don't put words in your mouth, but I feel that perhaps because he does help, I mean, pretty much everybody in this room, right? At least the three of us over here, we would have a much different life if it wasn't for him. And I think that he doesn't want to stress us out if he shows maybe some vulnerability that would make it harder for us, maybe, or at least that's what he thinks. That's just my hypothesis.
There is some of that for sure, but I also feel like I don't, it's kind of like embarrassing to be weak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really care to be weak.
But are you weak? What is weak?
At times, for sure. Like the market's really tough right now. Money is way different than it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things and a lot of responsibilities that I have on my plate that I just have to take care of it myself. There's nothing really anybody can do. So why let everybody else get involved in my shit?
Does the markets make you weak?
The markets, yeah, because it doesn't make me weak. The financial side of things, it's just tougher, And I'd rather just handle my own shit.
From what I've seen, though, from what I'm hearing, you do handle your own shit.
Yeah, so I don't have to let no one else has to worry about it.
So
I think.
So being one of those people, right?
This is about Phil, guys. It's not a Ryan's podcast.
Yeah, but I think this is good. It seems like Phil wants to go there.
All right, we can go there somewhat. I'll cut it off.
We can cut whatever out that needs to go. But I think that a lot of people in Ryan's situation don't understand is it's completely the contrary for me, with him always being strong. Right? It's because it makes it very difficult I'm speaking for myself, not for these two, but makes it difficult for me to be vulnerable around him because it feels like, well, he does it, like he's able to keep his shit together, so I've got to try and do that too. So it's harder on me, the lack of vulnerability, because I feel like I'm weak because he does it and he seems fine and I can't. And, he's the closest. Well, other than my children, we lost our parents too. He is my lifeline to the Madrid, legacy. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, that's just my take.
And I think that this goes down to it's kind of it's overused, but the putting your oxygen mask on first so that you can give oxygen to those around you is extremely important. And how it's displayed, I don't think. First of all, knowing you, it's going on 2 years and we're getting closer, but no one thinks you're weak. And no external factor can make that be so. It is, I think there's just opportunity to, back to it is cliche, but breathe and own every aspect of life, even when things aren't falling in our favor. But we can...
Yeah, there's the last thing I'm going to say. It's very hard thinking about the fact that you're going to disappoint everybody else.
Amen.
And that's just the tough part, and it gets really hard.
That is full circle. That was my biggest fear, is to disappoint the family that saved me and gave me all the opportunity in the world, and then didn't get to enjoy the entirety of their life. To disappoint them was my biggest fear. But what the work has shown me is the only way I'm going to disappoint is if I intentionally inflict pain on others, or I don't give it my all to make this place better than I left it. That's the only way.
Yeah.
Other than that, there is no failure. There's just not. We're here in this game together, and as long as we're doing everything at our best capabilities, which needs to be looked at, what is the best, you can't disappoint.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to just like you said, doing work, I'm constantly trying to do work, and I'm not great at consistency, and so like you said, we're doing the best. So I know that I'm never always doing the best, and I'm very much in and out of trying to find different things. But as long as I'm doing something, I at least at that point know that I'm on the track of doing the right thing, right? So a lot of this is this stuff. Like, I'm not consistent with meditation, but I do meditation, right? I'm not consistent with breath work or reading, a specific thing, or doing like maybe my top 3 things I did the night before or that day before, and then what am I going to do tomorrow? I'll do all these things, but it won't be all at the same time. And, it's just a matter of like, there's always excuses in your life and how things go. But I'm also a believer that like I enjoy my life too. And as long as like I'm not like being crippled by my emotions and stuff. And we had talked before about like, my past experiences with, some of the things that we were talking about, but I didn't always have to, like, even though I lost my parents young, I was 35. It's not too young. 35? Around there.
Yeah, I was 30.
I don't really have, like, trauma. Like, that, I have, like, that emotional part. Like, that's very shitty, obviously. I'm more bummed out about my kids not having their grandparents around. But from a childhood standpoint, it was pretty freaking awesome. So I don't really have that. I have like more like the joking stuff, how crazy my dad was, like psychopath, like, just like the most angry guy ever, but also the funnest, dude, so those all turned into like funny things. So my work is more about like the last, like it's almost more current stuff. Like I started doing work to try to figure out, okay, I need to be doing things better now. Not searching for something that was in the past, but I don't know. I mean, maybe I am looking for something from the past. I don't know. Me knowing that I disappointed my dad because he was disappointed has always bothered me, because he had no right to be disappointed in what I was disappointed in. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it was, I mean, probably the same thing that Aiden kind of felt like when he was younger about, achieving things to a level where like you're disappointing your dad because you're not doing it quite the way that he wanted you to. Mm-hmm. That was always something that, it's funny because I always said that I would never do the same things to him that my dad did to me, and I was way better, by the way.
From what I've heard, yeah.
But there's definitely moments where sports and stuff that like I regretted hugely, and I learned, I think, at a quick, way younger age, when for him to be like, okay, just back away. Like, this is not something I need to put my pressure on my dad. But I was a really thin kid, super skinny kid, and that used to bother my dad so bad. Like, he was like embarrassed by it, and that always kind of like, so when things would go south, because I was very athletic, but because I was so small, that it was like he was embarrassed by it. And I have like specific moments where he was just like disgusted. And I remember playing Little League. I was probably 11 or 12 years old. Playing.
What the hell was that?
No idea.
That was my dad saying, "Shut the fuck up."
That was it. That was it.
Don't tell this story.
I will say I'm sorry. I think that was an I'm sorry.
Yeah. Whoopsies. No, what happened was, so like in Little League, when you're done with practice, the grounders go to every position, you throw it in, and then you run in. Like getting a ball, I was playing second base, threw it in, and I short hopped it to the catcher. And the other coach, my dad was like the assistant coach. This is so crazy because this is like 30 some years ago. Said something like, Ryan's not strong enough to make it to, and my dad.
Marlon said that?
No, it was Josh. I can't remember the guy's name. Of course not, Marlon. Marlon would never say anything mean.
Right, no, he's so nice.
But I remember afterwards, my dad grabbing me by my arm, putting me in the car, putting me in the garage, and making me lift weights in the garage after baseball practice. And, that sort of shit, it was crazy. And then when I was like, God, we're getting deep on this one. Hold on. One more, and I'm going to quit. No. But so when I'm like 30, I mean, I was like really into like weightlifting, and I got pretty big. And I remember coming to my parents' house in like a tank top, which I never wore. And my dad going, why'd you have to wait 30 years to start getting big? And in my mind going like, you're a fucking dick. Like, why not, like, be like, damn, you look good? Well, he did. That's what he meant by it. And at this point, him and I were
That was his way of giving a compliment.
Yeah. At this point, like, we were really close. And we never really weren't, but nothing like him and I are. Not until I was way older.
But you bring up such a great point. And first of all, why on earth would you ever want to disappoint anybody?
Right.
But these things, even you're given some examples of things that were passed down directly from your dad. And like you said, you were intentional about not trying to pass this on. It's called, I think it's getting pretty popular, called ancestral trauma. Or generational trauma, I think but generational trauma versus there's ancestral trauma too. And this is when it gets really wild, is you go up your DNA history and we're carrying trauma from like wars that, if it hasn't been exercised out or worked on, get passed along at a cellular level. And there's a combination, right? They could just be passed on. You have no control over that. You just have to do the work. You own it now.
Yeah.
But then those that are just passed on from generation to generation, and at the end of the day, people are really just doing the best that they can. And once you get to that for me, that brought a lot of peace. Do we always want to expect better, wish things may have been different? Yes, but your parents are usually doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Well, if you look back at our paternal grandmother, a lot of that went to my dad for sure. Because we were, I don't know, I was in college, I think, when she passed. But, now as an older adult, I've heard so many stories about how, hate to use the word crazy loosely, but very irrationally volatile, I guess I'll say that. Mm-hmm. And I remember as little kids, everybody would be like, oh yeah, grandma, and then I was like, Dad, you're no different on many levels. And we have another extended family member who used to like shit on my dad for his behavior. And I'm like, you're the same. Like these are like Madrid, deep Madrid issues. And, like you said, I guess we can just work hard to try and not be like that. But it is bizarrely close.
Hard to fight your nature. Yeah.
Right. And luckily, that side of the family is also, so maybe they're a little bit high strung, but they're also incredibly successful and charismatic and, great in sales and very, very smart people.
Yeah.
But the flip side is sometimes it's just, there were many times when we were little where, again, I was a total daddy's girl, so I didn't necessarily have the same experience, but there were times he was frankly embarrassing. We were talking about a story before the show because Aiden's wearing a Rod Stewart shirt, and I had a whole story about how my dad went nuts on these people at a Rod Stewart concert. and my mom was like horrified and like wanted to slink out of the venue because
he thought he was 6'5", 260, but he was 6 foot 175.
Yeah. Yeah, he had
zero fear of anything at any time.
But yeah, unfortunately, some of that he also had zero fear of making people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like he did not give a shit. And our grandmother was the same way. I mean, she was. So, what is that noise? It's so weird. I just heard it again.
So, moving on back to Phil Crawford, everybody. So what you just did for me is some things that you're looking to do for others. Are you doing it right now for other people, like on an individual level? I know you're talking about doing it like for groups.
Yeah, so working one-on-one right now. I'm just doing this. This is nights and weekends, right? So whenever it works out and people are looking to explore a little bit, you can go. What's great about this stuff is you're just guiding someone. The beauty of all this work is it's all self-healing. You're just a guide navigating people along, because even if you've used Headspace or an app, that holds you a little bit more accountable and you can kind of unplug and just go along. But you have someone talking you through it, you can move at the pace and really get to, if you literally just like you just did, get to a spot where you can research and go through your history, feel into where you're feeling it in your body, it'll bring things up that you hadn't had the space to think about because you've been on your phone or with your kids or staring at a screen or working.
Yeah.
So the sessions can be pretty impactful. If I'm working with my own meditation and mindset coach, 2 of them actually, who are doing the same thing for me, and I'm learning from them how to walk through and get to these specific pain points and literally just clear out. I'm putting the frame on it as subconscious performance. It is meditation. It is a little bit of hypnosis. It's NLP and all that. But the idea of performance, which has been my key, is how do I achieve and effectively execute on the mission that I'm on? It starts with getting rid and eliminating of all of the limiting aspects and traumatic experience, anything weighing you down so you can achieve and perform. So that's where the idea of the subconscious performance, if you can address that, the results you'll get will speak for themselves.
One of the unique things I think for your situation is that you really like your job and you're very successful at it. And you have this other thing that you're like really, really into. That's also like, it's not your hobby, right? It's just work that you're doing that now you're just almost like just delivering to other people that you really enjoy doing. That's what you said, nights and weekends, right? Mm-hmm. Because you do have your career. Mm-hmm. But I think the cool thing is they can, trying to figure out a way to intertwine it in some way would be awesome. Have you thought about that?
I have, and it really is. All I'm trying to do is help myself 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit geared towards sales professionals. I by no means think it's limited to it. But the idea of going in and being a mindset or performance coach for, sales professionals, this exists on Wall Street, right? Mm-hmm. Like Wendy Rhodes off of Billions.
Exactly.
But it's not just limited to salespeople. But I do think it's just critical. Like if companies are looking to get the most out of their employees, this stuff is not really great with HR, right? Like in regard to we're intertwining the personal stuff and the professional stuff. Yeah. But to me, it's all hand in hand. The best organizations are the ones that are holistically aligned and are supportive of their employees getting rid of the mind trash and emotional struggles that they're having, because it's half the battle.
Yeah. In our space, obviously, I think it is intertwined quite a bit. It's easier. Mm-hmm. You're more in like corporate America, right, so to speak. So it's a little more difficult. But I mean, even like building relationships with clients and stuff, I think, dropping some of this sort of stuff because a lot of those people become your friends, mm-hmm, right? And, mm-hmm, and the more you can get real with people, the better. I know personally for us here, providing value to, like you said, to our employees, having you come in and doing something like this, or just any of this or all of this, would be nothing but a benefit. It's also getting the buy-in from the employees to want to really, work on themselves and or see the value in it. And it goes back to Stephen Harris and his thing too, the opportunity, Oppo flow. So talk about a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so Stephen, who was just recently on Into the Storm, he and I, we've both been working on this stuff. I was working with the Flow Research Collective at the time, and at Junto Summit, we both gave presentations. I was glad that I wasn't kicked out of the group after mine, because I did not know how that was going to go, and after making you guys get in the cold plunge. But we were reviewing the trip, and it was like, there was some overlap there. Like, had no idea that, his was going to include any of that.
Yeah.
So we said, we've got something kind of going on here. Instead of us both starting a podcast where we're just talking to the screen by ourselves, which we're both doing now too, let's just get together, start rapping about some of these topics, how they overlap, and see where it goes. Like, let's hold each other accountable to creating, which I think is the actual epitome, and the reason that humans are unhappy is they're not creating. We're in a very consumption stamp mindset right now. We spent a lot of time at Gento talking about that. We're consuming, and not getting the information or our own mental children out into the world into a state to share it with the world. And I think that's why people aren't very happy, is because we were meant to create. That's why people like having kids, or half the reason people like having kids. But that was the idea. Like, let's get together, talk about what we're working on, examples of excellence, and see where it goes. And yeah, we're on episode 18, the Success Flow podcast. And we do not have any operation like this. This has been very eye-opening. But we're going to keep at it. You know, we'll be at 20 episodes. That was the goal. I go, let's get 20 done. Because I think that puts you in 5% or whatever it is.
I think it's more like 2%.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah,
I think
like
5. I think 5 is where most people quit. Or
7.
Oh yeah,
7.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So there we are, overachievers. We're at 20, and I love it. I love it. Love this right now. I think that podcasting is even though it's everywhere and people are even joking around how it's everywhere. I still think it's early.
100%.
I think that the ability to be a fly on the wall of some of these conversations, like I was able to get to know a lot of the Junto group before meeting them, doing my research just because of Into the Storm.
Yeah.
And that has just been huge. And what we're able to take away, what we're able to create in a point in history is just, it's incredible. We're sitting here on my sister just went into labor, by the way, today.
Oh, wow.
And the fact that I'm going to be able to give Van a shout out on the day of his birth, and there's a capsule in time when we were all together sharing this that lives in infinity, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think it's totally caught on yet.
Not at all. And I will say this, it's one of the things that I see that sometimes frustrates me from a selfish standpoint is, so many like really popular podcasts are from like either a pro athlete, you know, a star of some sort, you know, a movie star or a TV star, you know, somebody that's been famous in some capacity, and they're able to have other famous people on, other athletes on, and, you know, it's like same 7 questions to the same guys, you know, specifically like, say there's like some basketball guys, right? Mm-hmm. You know, when was your wake up moment when you came into the league? Every single time, right? And they got it's the same story. When I feel like the content that's created in you know, your podcast, my podcast it's story driven, right? And it's like, it's intentional, and it's like things that I think are inspiring and things that will help other people think. But to get viewership is very difficult. And so you want to deliver this message to people, but how do you do that? Well, you got to pay a lot of money to do that, but you got to boost it, right? And you have to, you know, you got everybody to share it and you like it, and, you know, and it's like, for the people that really listen to this, because I know you are like a real listener, you know, it is really great. But I think that, you know, when we decided to do clips, it makes a huge difference because everybody's attention span is so short, right? There's going to be probably the opportunity for 10 clips in this one. And hopefully and that's fine. If that's all they want to listen to is like that part of it, but we want to drive them to the level of like listening to the whole thing, right? And it's so hard, you know, when you're competing against these freaking people that's really suck. I mean, it sucks, but there's like 250,000 views on YouTube for a podcast, and you're just like, really? Like, but it's mainstream America wanting to listen to somebody who they watched play on Sunday. You know, it's like, it really is, you know, I don't know. It's a little frustrating in that aspect because I just wish more people would listen to, like, this episode this is no worse than a Joe Rogan episode. To be honest with you, sorry. I mean, it's really not. There's the information that you're getting out of this is the same exact shit. But
I agree, and the thing about your podcast is if you're looking from a Phoenix aspect, like from a community standpoint, the amount of information you're getting about your local community, not Joe Rogan or right. LA and Hollywood or your sports team. I don't see what people are missing. That's why I think it's early. Yeah. Because of that, like, and it's the attention span thing too, which I hope is going to give, because it can't get any smaller. Yeah. And I'm just bullish that people are going to come around and realize, wow, the information that I've really been wanting to find, and especially from my local community, or, you know, people that are outside of just the top talking about the celebrity sports or politics, that it's going to come around, and I think we're just early. Yeah. And I think this topic is getting traction. It has been for a long time, I think, but right now it's like really, I think more people are willing to talk about, you know, like the meditation side of things and mental health and just getting better, working on yourself.
Speaking of that, Trisha, do you have something?
I just wanted to. I just looked at our numbers. This is our 79th episode. Just
79.
Yeah, if you
and we've been doing this for a long time.
We're actually right at about 2 years.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got this. I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting across the table. Because before I got to know Ryan, before I got to know you, I listened to it, getting ahead, doing my homework on the group, and it's just really well done. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it actually it gives me hope how quickly we can scale up because we've got a lot of work to do. But it's good, man, and it's not like you said. You've got a lot of real estate. You guys are doing a great job. It's not just real estate. You're getting so many good stories of people's paths, and that there's not one right way, and that there's always time to make changes, and you've got a really good thing going.
I think that just like with social media, it's hard not to get caught up in the vanity metrics, right? The numbers. So if let's just say 200 people watch this or 10, if they're the right people, that should matter. But it's really hard not to be like, why is this only being seen or heard by this small group? It's tough. The ego, and we spend so much time
a lot of work
on this, and Ryan's made a huge investment with equipment. It is frustrating, but I just keep trying. Today on the Built More Luxury tour, because John was there, right? So we're talking about his podcast episode. And then I was I can tell you offline, but like Corinne came up, and I sent the link off to some agents, and I'm like, just trust me on this.
Yeah.
Listen to it while you're driving around, just do it and you will thank me later. And it happens all the time. People are like, damn, like that was really good. And they might only listen to it in 5 or 10 minute increments, but if that somehow benefits that agent or entrepreneur or just any person, try to celebrate those wins.
Absolutely. That's why we're doing it. That's why you're doing it.
Right.
Who can you impact? And it really is kind of like this wide net to potentially catch 1 or 2 fish. But
yeah, for me, it's like when you pick like a guest, you want somebody on. For me, and we talk about this quite a bit, is that I just happen to have a lot of really cool friends. So 99% of the people that are on here are my friends. Out of the 80 or whatever, 78. I would say probably 73 or 4 I like friends with, and from either like the real estate space or just from childhood or from Junto, or just like out and about EC70, Charles, whatever. And so, but there's a lot of people that are way more successful than some of the people that I have on here in the same exact space, but they don't have like the story that I really care to talk about. And I'm not really interested in listening to systems and processes and workflows and stuff that's not what we built this for, really. Mm-hmm. Maybe at first we did. So yeah, we want to make it about the business. This is something that's going to help drive our business and what's the the value add, so to speak. But at the end of the day, it's you got to provide something that's going to be. Because it's not about me giving information. It's about the guests giving information and telling their story. Like you guys, your podcast is a different model. It's like you're providing information that people are going to want to listen to that you have in your head. And same with Steven, right?
We're bringing the guests in too.
Yeah. Totally.
That's a whole new different, or a whole new separate challenge that we're finding that you told us loud and clear.
Yeah.
Just the scheduling and
yeah.
But
we can help you out. We can give you some tips there if he hasn't already.
We're gonna.
Yeah, it was a huge challenge for us.
Yeah.
Like Steven, when I was walking him out last week, he's like, "So you record the same time, same day every week?" And I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "God, that's so much smarter than trying to like work around schedules and make
Yeah.
It's like one of the biggest recommendations I would make to anybody who's bringing on guests to a podcast. Make them come to you, because at first we were so worried that we weren't going to be able to get guests. So we were trying to accommodate their schedules, and it just was too tough to get us, 3 of us plus that guest in the room at the same time when we all have jobs.
No, we'll bend if we need to.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, but it's also nice that what mindset you're going to get in on Wednesday, or whenever it is. Yeah. You can be prepared to be in that space.
Totally.
On that day.
That's
my
pretty
favorite
much
day of the week, hands down.
Yeah. Another
energizing.
The call to action, I think, with this podcast is something that we're always kind of working on too, trying to figure out, okay, from a viewer standpoint, how do they take this episode and implement it in their brain to be like, all right, this is ultimately, we're in the Bison Ventures studio. It's Into the Storm podcast, but it's part of our marketing for Bison Ventures, right? Our mortgage company. And how does it drive business to us as well? And, that's why having realtors and people in the real estate space on this is something that we value as well. Hopefully people that are working with us or people that, we want to work with. But when we have episodes that are like this, or episodes, just for somebody who's doing work in the community, it's also ultimately, I want that, like, that feeling from the viewer to be like, these look like the people that I want to be like doing things with. Or, hey, when they're at a party and someone goes, I'm going to go buy a house and I need to get a loan. Well, dude, have you checked out, Into the Storm and Ryan and Trisha over there at Bison Ventures? They're great, right? And I think it happens. I mean, we definitely have fans, so to speak, that people that love the show. We haven't like figured out exactly what the metric is and what's the ROI. But I know we don't lose money, put it that way. But it's
sorry.
Sorry, like I think this is more of a brand proposition than a true marketing one, right? And Ryan and I agreed on that very early on. And I think what I believe has been the biggest benefit is this humanizes us.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Ryan becomes way more approachable when you see him talk
the unapproachable
about
guy.
Well, no. Sorry, not that he's not. But I'm saying that.
Ask me about the first Junto happy hour.
Okay. But I think that for anybody, you, the guests, even myself, even though I'm just piping in on the microphone, people are craving connection with an authenticity, and I know that's like such a overused kind of like buzzword right here, but it's real. I mean, there's tens of thousands of people, just agents alone. I don't know how many loan officers there are, but they're like 70,000 real estate agents. It's like, why would somebody hire this person over this person if they don't have a personal or a personal connection through family or friends? It's because they feel like they can trust them and they feel like they have something in common with that person, right? And that, I think this is creating opportunities for people to be like, oh yeah, I played soccer when I was a kid. Oh yeah, I studied in Spain. Whatever that thing is, just makes us more than just mortgage people.
I couldn't agree more. And I told you I was having some conversation this week and brought Bison into the conversation because I had just met this guy's wife for the first time. She's a realtor. I brought it up, and it does give you something to send over. That's not just an Instagram with listings. Like,
right? Yeah.
No, 100%.
That's big, and to be able to do that, I think is something that, and also be fun to listen to, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's actually a good product. Gotta have that as well. But it is a differentiator, and I'm sure helps you show up week in, week out to do the work.
I think that before we wrap, I think that we need to really figure out if and what episodes we want to be sending out. Like Steven does a really good job of sending out his every other week. Is it
his newsletter?
Yeah,
it's weekly.
His weekly newsletter. I think this should be sent out to our clients and to our partners and all that sort of stuff. It needs to happen. So
I agree.
Get on that.
Absolutely.
I agree.
All right. Yeah. All right. We're gonna wrap up now, but I think we're almost at an hour and a half, but that's pretty good. Thanks for coming on. I knew this was going to be a really good episode. And there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of nuggets in this one that's going to, I think, not only benefit us, but you as well. And the guests. I mean, this is deep. And I have like a lot of like things in my head going on about who you should be talking to. I may never hear from Brian North again once Phil and him get together.
There were so many
meaning it's gonna be like two best friends.
Well, I got to meet him briefly, but then we haven't been able to connect.
Yeah,
since,
well, you guys need to connect because there's so much similarities. And Jason Randolph as well.
Jason for sure.
In fact, we'll probably walk over there and say hello after we get done there. But anyways, thanks again. What'd you think, Aiden?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so fun having you here.
Just
Can you come work here for free? So, all right.
I'll trade you that T-shirt for a job.
Deal.
Yeah, take your fucking shirt off. Excuse me on that one, everybody. All right, that's about wraps it up then. Thanks everybody out there. Please listen, like, and subscribe. Go on to our social media platforms or all the social media platforms.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, dude. Appreciate it. Wrapping it up. Thanks, everybody.